Welcome to the Performance Enhancing Podcast. It's like steroids for your brain. A podcast for people that want the best info, but just don't have the time. Get your podcast fix with the Cliff Notes versions of your favorite podcasts. No fluff, just the actionable golden nuggets. Having this much knowledge at your fingertips should be downright illegal. So get ready for another dose of Performance Enhancing Podcast with Satori Prime. Here's your host, Ilan Ferdman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Performance Enhancing Podcast with your host, Ilan Ferdman. Today, I have a great friend. Guy and I were actually on his podcast recently, and you know him from a podcast that I reviewed of his with John Assaraf. He's the man that told John Assaraf he doesn't believe in law of attraction, which was pretty freaking awesome. With me today is Ryan Moran. He's an entrepreneur. He's actually based out of Texas in Austin, and one of the most sought-after speakers in Amazon marketing, investing, and lifestyle design. We're going to talk a lot about a couple of those today. He's best known for creating highly profitable businesses without compromising lifestyle, and for practical and profitable investing strategies to support your ideal lifestyle. Now, Ryan is also a diehard Cleveland Indians fan. He wanted you guys all to know that. And when he's not speaking from stage or traveling, you'll find him at an improv show or an Indian game. By the way, with the improv show, well, first of all, welcome, Ryan.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Ilan.
When you say improv, like you're actually performing or you just like to watch them?
No, I do improv like for fun. It was just funny because I hear people say, you couldn't pay me to get up there. How much do they pay me? I'm like, this is how I relax as I go on stage and do
how I relax. Yeah. I told my wife like a long time ago, I was like, I would love to do a comedy bit, just like get up and do like a stand-up mic thing, whatever. And her and my brother are like, no, absolutely do not do that. I'm like, wow, I thought it was funny.
I'll have to I'll have to zip you over the recording of my one and only stand-up set.
Nice. Okay.
4-minute set. A decent response for a first go.
It's super hard. You know, like people underestimate how hard it is because we're kind of in our circle of friends a lot and you kind of know the buttons to push to make people laugh. But when you're out on stage, like it's a whole different ballgame. So kudos.
I'll tell you what, let's just flip the script. Instead of interviewing me for this podcast, Ilan is just going to do
a
stand-up comedy. And we'll see if your podcast ranking goes up or disappears from iTunes. And that'll be a great gauge to see if you should do some open mic nights.
Very good. You know what? It just so happens I have a few jokes prepared for you guys. Nice, buddy. Okay. So let's jump right in because I want people to know a little bit about you. You've done a lot, and just tell people how old you are, so it kind of like creates a context, because this is pretty amazing.
I'm 84, and I look really good for my age. Yes. People mistake me for 26, which is on my birth certificate. But yeah, I started my first business when I was 18. Actually, first business probably when I was 5 years old, and I drew hand-drawn pictures on computer paper and went door to door in my neighborhood selling them for a penny each. 4 cents made that night. 100% profit because my dad paid for all the paper. Thank you very much.
Nice.
But I started my first legal business that was pretty under the table. Don't tell Obama. My first legal business was at 18, and I've been in business as an entrepreneur full time for about 8 years.
Okay. Now, when I first came across your name, you were in the info product space, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Just tell people a little bit. What were you doing in the info product space?
Okay. So my first business ever, I was an affiliate. I did really well as an affiliate, and I had websites that would rank in Google, and I'd sell things on those websites. And somehow along the way, going to conferences and stuff, I got kind of known for being one of the make money online guys, which was interesting because I never sought out to be one of those guys. I never wanted to be like a make money online guru, but I had all these associations and I had this list and I had these people who saw me as that. And so my thought was, in order for me to have the level of success of my peers and mentors, I had to duplicate what all of them had done. So I started releasing products and doing video sales letters and such, all which were really good strategies for me to learn, but they weren't what I wanted to be. I didn't want to be that. First of all, there's a cap to it. You have like a certain level that you kind of peak out at doing that. And I didn't find value in, as though I didn't feel like I was creating a massive amount of value. I felt like my value was better spent elsewhere. So I literally shut that business down, just cut it off about a year and a half ago.
Okay. And so you didn't get value, didn't love it, etc. And then we kind of met right when you were in that transition mode. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, before we go into the transition and how you did that, you're obviously making really good money at the time in the info product space, right?
Right.
Well-known brand, etc., growing. How do you choose in that moment? Because the golden handcuffs are a bitch. How do you choose in that moment to cut it? And because you didn't really know what you were going to do next, right?
Correct.
So what's that process like? How do you just go, you know what? Doesn't light me up anymore. I'm out.
This is interesting, and I hate admitting what I'm about to admit. And that is that I decided long before I officially shut the business down that I wanted out of that business. So I took a risk. It was $100,000 risk. And I decided that I was going to take this $100,000 and I was going to try and grow this business into something that I was really proud of. And I did it horribly wrong. I mean, horribly. I mean, I look back and I'm embarrassed at how bad I did this. And as a result, that money went away. And I decided that long ago that if I ran out of that money, that I would not continue investing in that business. So I kind of turned the golden handcuffs in on themselves. And I decided I was going to not shut the business down. I was going to try and grow the business in a different direction. And if I was able to go in that direction, if I was able to take what I had built and turn it into something better that I was proud of, that I would go that way. If I couldn't, I would shut it down, and I couldn't. So it wasn't. I didn't really have the golden handcuffs because of the risks I took that ended up losing money, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit that publicly, if you will. But that is the truth. That is what happened.
Ryan, I got to tell you, I now love you just a little bit less. I'm just kidding. Love you, brother. So, okay. So you left the business and you left with pretty much having little money, no money. How did you transition?
The way I transitioned was I was comfortable enough to where I wouldn't have had to do anything for a little bit.
Okay.
I told somebody that I was like, well, at least I had $100,000 to lose. I don't anymore, but
that is a really good point though.
But I didn't have it anymore. And the process was I could have just kind of pieced out for a while and kind of get my bearings. But what I decided to do is there's something interesting. We'll talk about this when we talk about investing, but there's something about, I think, especially in men, that the need for security financially to provide and move forward. Yep. As men, we are constantly looking forward to what threats are out there in the future that we need to shut down now.
Yep.
So the minute you start operating in the red, someone in your brain says you're going to end up moving back home with your mom and working at Walmart. It is a very fast spiral. So what I did is I just took on a couple clients in the meantime, people that I had networked with, people that I knew I could help their businesses based on what I had learned in my business, and wind those down as I got more and more successful with the businesses that I would start next. But in regards to your question of what did I do during that transition, was I worked very, very hard on myself during that time, and looking at what did I do right, what did I do wrong, what do I never want to do again, what am I like, what is my fitness level like? I started really working on myself, because I wanted to be in a position to where, even though I couldn't see opportunities immediately, I knew that they would come, and I wanted to be ready for those when they came.
Awesome. So give me a couple of those. So you're making this list. What did you do right?
let's start with what I did wrong, because I was coming off of what felt like a massive failure. And other people now, and even I'll look back and say I'm really proud of how I handled that, but I had $100,000 and then it was gone because of mistakes that I made as the leader of my company.
Okay.
So it felt a lot like failure. The things that I did wrong in that process were hiring too aggressively and not strategically enough, focusing on something that I really didn't, focusing on things that were short term rather than long term. I should have been really building systems and people and products that I wanted around forever. But what I really thought was, if I'm going to risk this money, I got to get it profitable right away. But what I found is that when you focus on the long term, you actually get profitable quicker than when you're focusing on like the short term hit. The things that I did right, I had to go back further to think of what I did right, because I did a lot of things right when I started that business. But once I started hanging out with people and buying into the lie that I had to be just like them if I wanted to be successful, that is when I started failing. When I started trying to emulate people that weren't me, but were at a certain level, and I believed the lie that I had to duplicate what they did in order to be successful, that is when business started going down.
Yep.
And I continued to operate from that place of giving value. I probably would have made a lot more money than I did during that time. So that's what I did during transition. I took on a couple of clients, and with my audience, I just started going back to my roots of being very vulnerable and giving a lot of value. And the response was absolutely incredible.
You bring up such a good point. This is something that we harp on in every one of our masterminds. Whenever someone comes in and they're like, what should I do? What should I that? My simple answer, they just can't hear it, is be yourself. And I know it sounds so cliche, but like especially in the, make money online marketing space, everyone looks to somebody else and they're like, well, they're successful, so let me be like them. And then they make video sales letters like them and they write like them, but they're not them. And it works for them because it's them.
Yeah.
And I love that you bring that word vulnerable, because I think that's what people buy into. People buy into your story, not your success and the money and the da. It's literally like the human is what they're attracted to. Your friends aren't around you because you made $1 million. Your friends are around you because you're that person to them.
Yeah, there's two things I want to add to that. One being, I studied economics in college, and there was this term that there's this term that we use a lot called comparative advantage. Mm-hmm. Comparative advantage being that you may not be the best at something, but you are positioned well in the marketplace. You are able to do it. The opportunity cost to you is maximized. So this is the place where a company or a person would fit in. Well, that was a really technical way of leading into the point that the internet has leveled the playing field completely.
Yes.
So we're all able, if we can all be our total selves and have the best comparative advantage, because nobody else can duplicate exactly what your skills are.
Yeah.
And what I decided to do with that was I said, okay, I'm just going to go in this direction, and whoever shows up is going to be my ideal client, rather than trying to change my message so that I am reaching this group, which is exactly what I was doing and failing at it horribly. I decided I was just going to go be me, and believed that the people who resonated with that message would just start to show up. It's funny. I get more thank you notes and more like vocal acts of appreciation from people now than I probably ever have in my business. And I'm not selling anything. I'm not doing any coaching or anything. It's just coming from things like my blog and my podcast, because I'm talking about things it's just me. I don't have an agenda. I don't have anything, but the people who resonate with that message show up. And so you attract the best audience you can possibly have because they're responding to you.
Exactly. It's kind of like with the friends thing, right? You didn't go out there like hunting down, like you didn't see someone at a bar like, I'm going to make him my friend. You're just like, you're being you, and somehow you attract a certain group of friends. I think people have a massive misconception about what it takes to make 6 and 7 figures or 8 figures or whatever it is, but let's say like 6 and 7 figures. I tell people, find 1,000 people that connect with your message and you could be a millionaire. Like, you don't need 10 million people. You don't need to sell iPhones out the door like in the millions. Find 1,000 people that love you for what you are and who you are. You're successful.
Yeah, the people that say you need tens of millions of people are saying that because in that 10 million people, there's going to be 1,000 that resonate with whatever message they're going to present anyway. Or you could just present your message and the right people will show up.
Yeah, I really like that. That's very interesting. Did you do any, just off of that, spin off of that, did you do any surveying? Did you, to try to find out who those people are? Or you just like...
No, because I didn't care about losing the people that weren't going to resonate with the message that I was going to present. And to be honest with you, at the time, I didn't know what I was going to do. This is basically what happened. And you mentioned that I do a lot of Amazon marketing now.
Yeah.
And I decided I was going to go in that direction, that I was going to shut down my businesses, which I did. I took off all my sales pages and I decided I was going to go in the different direction. I saw an opportunity. I knew the business I wanted to create. So I started to move in that direction. And I told my list, I told my subscriber, my audience base, I said, I'm going in this direction. If any of you would like to join me, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to learn along the way. And my area of expertise of marketing and copywriting, I'll share with you along the way if you want to come along for the ride. And I started this mastermind and just went in that direction. And I kid you not, within 1 week, I made that $100,000 back.
Wow.
I made $100,000 back just deciding to go in this direction and saying, if anyone wants to join, this is what I'm doing. And I didn't know if anybody was going to sign up. I didn't know if anybody would care. It was just like, I'm going in this direction. If you want to join, that's cool. And here's where you sign up. And that was exactly what I did. And I continue to operate from that area now of I'm leading by example. And if you'd like to follow along, you can find me on iTunes under the name Freedom Fastlane.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, by the way, is an amazing podcast. So definitely go check it out. You said something before I just want to go back to, because you just said it on your recent podcast when you recreated the speech from Amazing Selling Machine. You said a great line. So rather than me share, I want you to share it. You talked about thinking long term and how that affects your success. But the way you said it was just absolutely brilliant. And you just touched on it before. So I want you to drive this point home because it's one of the smartest things and smartest ways I've ever heard someone put it together.
I think the quote you're referencing is when I said that the longer view of success that you can have, the more successful you will be.
Yeah. Say it one more time so people get it because it's so freaking good.
The longer view of success you can have, the more successful you will be.
Okay.
Most entrepreneurs get stuck in this month to month or quarter to quarter thinking. These are the guys who will launch a product every quarter. Yes. Because they don't know what to do after they do a launch. They launch another thing and another thing, and they promote everything. There's a very short time frame of thinking, so they never grow out of that. There's a cap to that. They can't think beyond it. If you look at, I compare this to the stock market. If you look at the stock market year over year, you may or may not be pleased with the results. You could have an up year or a down year. If you look at a 10-year window, most of the time it looks pretty good. If you look at a 100-year window, you've done really, really well. Same is true in real estate. Prices may fluctuate year over year, but if you could go back and buy houses at the price at 1950, everybody would be rushing to buy houses.
Yeah.
So the longer view you can have of success, the more you're successful you will be. Also in business. Because if you're looking at a short-term window, then you will be operating from this place of short-term results indefinitely until you finally make the change of thinking long-term of where do I want to be in a year, 3 years, 5 years. So I say when you're starting a business, minimum 1 year, build for not today, but for that 1 year plan. When I started, we both podcast, and when I started doing podcasts, I knew that I was going to put a year into it before I started to evaluate the results. And most people look at the 8-week window of when they're highlighted on iTunes and the new podcast. And then when they disappear, they go, this sucks. I can't get an audience anymore. But if you have a year window, you know, okay, what can I use the good times for to plan for later? And when things go down, how can I change it so that I hit my 1-year target?
Yeah.
So I say, if you can think in 1 year advance, 3 years advance, 10 years advance, the longer view you can have of success, the more successful you will be, because you start planning much differently than if you're operating from this short-term sprint.
Brilliant. So to bring back what you said before with the 100K, would you say the 100K thing you failed at because you didn't have that mindset, because you were like looking at the short term?
Absolutely. You see, what happened was I never really made the full transition into building something that I was proud of, which would have been necessary for me to think more long term than I was thinking. The way that I was thinking was kind of in these, I hired somebody, so now I have more expense. So what do we do to get that revenue back? And it didn't go how I wanted, so I got to do another one. It's this grasping at straws to try and get something rather than create something that has an immense amount of value that people are naturally attracted to. So I think your analysis is correct. So
one of the things, because I just want to drive this home in a point, because you brought this up in your podcast, and I thought it was really smart, and I think people can kind of map this on. Your new business is in Amazon. You sell products on Amazon.
Yeah.
You've reached already 7 figures, right?
Yep.
Which is absolutely amazing. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And you said something that when you first launch a product, and honestly, I think this was the line that probably got you the standing O, because I think this is the reason people will continue to fail in that business, in any business. You shared how when you launch a product, you are not afraid to lose money and spend way more money in the first, whatever it is, however long that period takes you, that 3-month period or whatever it is, can be longer. And talk about that a little bit, because there's some mindset shift that allows someone, because that plays into this, long-term vision of success. Like most people that I coach, I have the same argument with them. They're like, well, I'm willing to spend $1,000 on Facebook marketing, but I want to know that I can get that $1,000 back in 30 days. I'm like, you're missing the whole point. Like, I would rather you spend five $1,000 months every single month and not make a penny, but then learn the lessons to spend $1,000 on month 6 and make 5.
Right.
But people don't see it that way. So talk a little bit about that, because maybe we can inject some knowledge into people about how, when they're starting, they need to think.
Sure. I knew that in order to compete on the marketplace, we needed a few things. We needed rankings in Amazon. We needed reviews. We needed to generate sales systems that would bring in cash flow over the long term. And that wasn't going to get built up in 7 days or 30 days. I recognize the fact that most people go in and they're like, okay, I've got product now, so I guess I'll just wait for my product to sell because I don't want to spend any more money. I don't want to lose money trying to make money.
Yes.
And I said that we are going to build up the systems, even if it means that we are going to go into the red doing so. So we had no problem giving away tons of product, doing ridiculous discounts, advertising more than we made when we got it back, because as a result, we start to rise in the rankings on Amazon. We start to get a bunch of reviews. We start to build up a customer base. And by doing that, we were able to create a long-term cash flow system. That, once we slowed down the operation in red and doing giveaways and discounts and all this stuff, all of a sudden now we're insanely profitable, like ridiculously profitable. So that plays well into that. How long is your view of success? Since we were looking a year plus out, we were looking, okay, what do we need to do in order to be a 7-figure business in a year? Well, in order to do that, you can't be thinking about taking money off the table and going from 0 to 60 day one. It's not going to happen that way.
Yeah.
You have to hustle those first few stages of business and make a bunch of mistakes and sometimes go into the red in order to get your numbers, in order to understand the process, in order to build up the customer base that is going to carry you beyond that. Ryan Dice says that the person who can spend the most money to acquire a customer wins.
Yes.
Which is often true. But what I took from that phrase that he said on stage at Traffic and Conversion Summit was that the people who can wait out these storms the longest win. That was kind of my twist on it. So there's consolidations coming in every marketplace, and Amazon is going to be that way too. Right now, it's kind of a wide open west, but there's going to be a consolidation where the people who have this longer term view of success, who are willing to weather the storm at first, they're going to be the ones that succeed, while the people who are not willing to do that are going to flake off. And I think that is the case in almost every business.
I agree wholeheartedly. Every business. There's a great quote you just reminded me of. My mentor, when we first started, he said, the only difference between successful people and not successful people are successful people can stand in no result way longer than anyone else and still play 100%. Like they don't need the result to prove to them that they should keep playing. They just play. And I think what that creating that long-term vision of success, people get stopped by not meeting a certain expectation. If your expectation is, I need to make that money back in 30 days, and that doesn't happen because in most cases that's completely unrealistic, then they're like, fuck it, this shit doesn't work, right? But if your goal is, I'm going to bust my ass for 12 months just to then be able to pull out maybe a first penny for me, that's a whole different game. Like 3 months you're not making money, you're still pushing. You haven't even hit your target. And I just really, really want people to get that because it's super, super important in starting any business.
Well, we have this perception that people are instant successes.
Ugh.
Because that's what we see, right?
Or they're lucky.
Well, we see people come out of nowhere. So the perception is success happens quickly. They don't know all the stuff that's happened behind the scenes of preparing for that.
Yeah.
I really like what you said of the person who can withstand no result the longest is the one who wins, because I have this buddy who has one of the top health and fitness podcasts. His name's Ben Greenfield. And I was sitting at lunch with Ben, and he said, I was like, Ben, what do you think has been the difference maker between your podcast being just incredibly successful and all these podcasts that are flooding into the market right now? And he goes, consistency, of course. He's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I mean, for months and months and months, I had no audience, but just kept hustling. And all of a sudden it just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And one day, all of a sudden I'm here. There's a book by Jeff Olson called The Slight Edge that just absolutely hammers this point.
Okay.
He says that time is the great equalizer. He will either promote you or expose you. And the difference is the people who consistently make the right decisions that are easy to make, but decisions that are also easy to not make. And or easy to do and easy not to do.
Yeah.
And that is the difference, because for a while you're operating the same place until there starts to be a split.
Yeah.
And then it becomes exponential at that point, just by continually doing those things that are result driven.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think on your podcast with John Assaraf, he was saying, if you do the right things in the right order consistently, right, you're going to get results. And that really stuck with me because it's like gardening, right? Like if you planted a seed every single day, I always tell people, like, take one action that moves your business forward, one a day. After 365 days, there is no way you're going to be in the same place. It's physically impossible.
Yeah. You
may not have the best tree in the world yet, but you're going to find a tree or two that are really worth cultivating. And people are they stop too damn short of that.
Tony Robbins says if you improve 1% every day, then that's exponential. Because at the end of the year, I don't know what the math is, but numbers freak me out. But at the end of a year, it's not a 365% increase. It's like a kabillion% increase or whatever, because of some math thing. But it builds on each other, right? That's the point, is that every day it gets a little bit bigger by just improving a little bit every time.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. So real quick, just to finish this Amazon thing, are you in love with your business now?
Yes.
Yes. Is this the move that you wish you would have made like 3-4 years ago?
My goodness. It's my only regret is that I didn't make a change earlier. I guess that's everybody who's made a good decision thinks that, right? But there's this sense of, what'd you call them? The golden shackles?
The golden handcuffs. Yep. The
golden handcuffs is, I think you said it best when you called them a quote bitch. And I think most people are trapped by them.
Yeah.
But what's interesting for me is, as soon as I made that decision, all my friends who I'd been seeing as like happy, wealthy, and wise were like, you can do that? You're allowed to leave? And it was just this herd mentality of everybody's doing it. Well, and then I leave and everybody's like, I didn't even know you could I didn't know that was allowed. And so now it's just like, why I realized the error in my thinking, that in thinking that everybody else had it figured out. They didn't. No. They're envious of me now because I got out, because I stopped doing something that I don't like doing. Listen, right? This is a writer downer.
I'm writing.
You're gonna die one day. Stop doing shit you hate because you don't have time for it.
Damn right. Damn right. Amen, brother. Mic drop.
I like that you said amen, because I went to school to be a pastor.
Really?
And I did, yeah. And I obviously am not a pastor because I just said shit on a podcast. And you said amen, which, I never thought I'd get an amen, but I just
And we're laughing. Can you tell that I just had an absolute blast with Ryan Moran? Great kid. Just such a good head on his shoulders. I think our energies just totally somehow bounce off each other. And I don't know, as this thing kept going, we just got more and more riled up. So in the second part of this interview, we're actually going to talk a lot about his investment strategies. And we're also going to talk about a bunch of other kooky things. But I just wanted to end part one here because that kind of finalizes the story of how he transitioned from info marketer to now on Amazon. And hopefully you get a sense of how really brilliant this kid is at such young age. So hopefully you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, again, head over to iTunes and leave us a rating or review. Let Ryan know how much you love him. Let us know what you learned. Let us know who else you'd like us to interview. We just want to hear from you. Hope you're having an amazing, amazing day. Be well, my friends. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you for joining us on this week's Performance Enhancing Podcast. We've taken this pep talk and created a custom action guide so you know exactly what action steps to take now to grow your business. Just head over to satoriprime.com/podcast and download it for free. Also, please leave a comment and rate this podcast on iTunes. It'll help us get the word out. Thanks for listening. Now, go and implement. We'll see you next time.